Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your coffee break. I am very excited to bring up our next speaker from the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Madhury Ray.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dee Ray from New York City's Health Department, and I work in the Office of Emergency Preparedness and Response. So our mission at the Health Department is to protect and promote the health of all New Yorkers. In my office, we think about what that means in a disaster. So today, I'm going to talk about how we approach this really particular problem of health in a disaster and how we use a spatial solution. So one of the specific challenges we think about is how we can get people dialysis in a disaster. Raise your hands if you know what dialysis is. All right, so a lot of people are familiar with it. My one-sentence version is that dialysis is a medical process that tries to do the job your kidneys do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When your kidneys fail, dialysis becomes a regular part of your life. Most people have to go to a medical facility called a dialysis center for a 4-hour procedure 3 times a week. And the thing about dialysis is you can't miss it no matter who you are. To understand how this works in New York City, we have to think about who uses dialysis and how they get there. The important thing to realize about people who use dialysis is that they often have a lot of other medical issues. 70% of people who use dialysis have trouble walking more than a few blocks. Because of this, to get to your regular dialysis appointment, many New Yorkers rely on paratransit services that have to be scheduled far in advance. So then a disaster strikes. And I'm just going to read off this slide. Because in a disaster, the infrastructure we rely on every day fails us. In a disaster, paratransit might shut down, public transport might be limited, dialysis centers in an impact area could close, and not knowing where to go, people who use dialysis regularly, especially at those centers, can overwhelm hospitals. In the end, the already difficult task of getting dialysis can become near impossible in a disaster. So the health department doesn't work alone in these situations. I'm going to walk you through 3 stories that illustrate how the government, which is us, the healthcare system, meaning dialysis centers, and individuals and their families have to work together to take care of people who use dialysis in a disaster. So my first story is about an individual and their families and what they can do in a snowstorm. So in this first story, your mom lives in Queensbridge. She can get around on the train if she doesn't have to walk too far. She gets dialysis 3 times a week right now at Dialysis Center X. So mom is worried about coordinating paratransit arrival and departure times with her appointments. And if it snows, her paratransit's often canceled, and so she has to miss dialysis or take an expensive cab. If mom could take the train as a backup, that would make you feel a lot better. And can we go to the map, please? And is the map up? Great. So this point here, this red dot, is mom's house. If I look at these teal squares, these are all dialysis centers in New York City. And I've got my mouse now on Dialysis Center X. But we've decided that we want mom to be able to take the train. So let's look at the subway stations and subway lines. So Dialysis Center X looks like it's a little far from the train. Not sure if mom would be comfortable doing that. So let's think about 3 blocks, which is where mom is comfortable walking. So let's look at that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn all the dialysis centers that are in this 3-block radius orange. Mom's dialysis center is not orange. But what we can do is we can think about, let's just take off all the dialysis centers that are not close to the train. These are a whole bunch of dialysis centers that I could work with mom to transfer to make her feel a lot better. But before, we talked about the snow, right? You go to Queens all the time. You visit mom when it snows, and you know that the second snow hits the ground, that all the train stations above ground are closed. So let's think a little bit about the train station structure. We don't want elevated lines, right? Because we want mom to be able to take the train in the snow. So let's filter these to underground lines. And now you have a list, or you can look at any of these dialysis centers, maybe the Astoria Dialysis Center, and hook mom up there. Now mom's happy, and you don't have to spend your day worrying about her getting to her dialysis. All right, and can we go back to the slides, please? We good? All right, so now that mom's settled, let's talk about the dialysis centers, which we're calling the healthcare system, right? So almost half of the dialysis centers in New York City are independently run. When an independent dialysis center has to transfer its patients in an emergency, years of records and complex billing information has to go with each of those patients. In our second story, Dialysis Center Y is an independent center in the Bronx that's worried about what will happen in an emergency. And guess what? Your job, since you did so well with mom, is to make the plan. And then I will actually go to the map again. This is a different map. Come on. Oops. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. 1 second. So here you have Dialysis Center Y, okay? As part of your plan, right, you want to partner with other centers so that if something happened, like a power outage or a water main break that required you to shut down, you'll have an agreement beforehand and you'll have a plan in place to transfer your patients there. Since you're an independent dialysis center, should I hit resolve on this? Okay. Since you're an independent dialysis center, oh, no, that's all right. Since you're an independent dialysis center, it's important to you that you partner with other independent dialysis centers. So if you look here, you're now only looking at independent dialysis centers. You also know your patient population, right? You know that many of your patients use wheelchairs. If you have to send them to a different center, you want to know that they can use the train to get there if they have to. So let us look at these subway stations and subway lines. And let's just make sure, let's do what we did before and turn the dialysis centers near the train orange. This is great, but it only tells us what dialysis centers are near any train station. But your patients in wheelchairs can't just use any station. So let's look now only at the accessible stations. And we'll take all dialysis centers off, and so you can see a little bit easier. I'll just take the lines off. But now you have a list, right? You have a list of agents of other dialysis centers that you can partner with. And let's go back to the slides. All right, so we've taken care of mom, and our independent dialysis centers have partnered together. Everything's great. Our last story is going to talk about what the health department does in a disaster. So this time, the health department learns that a hurricane is coming to New York City. So New York City has established 6 geographically discrete hurricane zones based on the likelihood of impact if a coastal storm like Hurricane Sandy were to hit again. Since dialysis is something, if you remember, I said that you need about every 3 days, you can tell patients, if you think a storm is coming, to get their dialysis before the storm hits. We can also tell the dialysis centers that we expect will be impacted that they might have to shut down so they can prepare to send their patients elsewhere. And let us switch to the map again, please. So one of the important jobs of the health department in a disaster is to provide what we call situational awareness to the dialysis centers, to patients, to their families. So if the health department, let's say the health department learns this hurricane is coming to New York City, we can expect that, let's say, hurricane zones 1, 2, and 3 will be impacted. So you can see over here that I've filtered to zones 1, 2, and 3, and I know that a total of 19 dialysis centers will be impacted. I can talk to these dialysis centers about how many patients they have and the characteristics of their patients and ask similar questions to the ones that I asked previously. Now, the other thing that you can look at is the opposite of that, right? We talked about what's closed. We can look at what's open. And again, we can use all of the features here to say where to go. Ideally, in a situation like this, the health department could publish a map like this and take off centers that it knows are closed as it learns that they are being closed. All right, and I'll actually just stay on, I have a very pretty icon from Noun Project with a map on it, but I think I'm just gonna stay on the computer since there isn't a lot of content there. So making sure that people who use dialysis are okay in a disaster is a challenge, like I said, that needs the combined efforts of the health department, the healthcare system, and individuals and their families. And so the other part of what the health department does is give all of those entities the tools to handle a disaster when it strikes. And to that end, I have a special treat for you in the audience. So this is our health department CARTO account. This is the builder interface of the map that I just showed you. And we're gonna go live in front of everybody. So let's make it public. And let's see, it's not going up here. And there we go, right there. Take a look at it if you want. Just Google NYC DOHMH CARTO. I'm already over, but I'm still going to end my talk with a little tangent. And that's that I came up with this map while thinking about accessible train stations, right? Accessibility and data don't always go hand in hand. So the question I'm going to ask is, what is the value of what you made if it can't be used? Okay, the nature of maps and the way we interact with them has changed radically in my lifetime, and contrary to what some people think, I'm not that old. So I'm going to leave all of you map brains in the room with this challenge, right? Think about how your maps are defined by who can use them, all right? What about who can look at them? What if you couldn't look at them? So tactile visualizations, which are actually called spatializations, are a way of representing information that utilizes touch instead of sight. So my question for you is, how do you make a tactile map? Call me when you have the answer. Thank you.